Play different.
Greetings fellow mechanics. In this video we're looking at Swoop, Swoop-a-doo, Swoop-a-doo, Swoop-a-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. A clone of the 1979 Namco game Galaxian with a little bit of its sequel Galaga thrown in for good measure. This was developed by David Waring for Ambrosia Software, so let's dive in, shall we? Yes, let's shall. The mechanics of the game are quite simple. You move your little ship to the left and right on the bottom of the screen, and you shoot at the aliens who are flying up above. Once all the enemies are gone, you move on to the next level, which has more aggressive ones. The aliens don't simply fly from left to right, however. They will periodically swoop, hence the name, at the player in little kamikaze style attacks. Enemies are worth more points while they're swooping, but they're also more dangerous, making a little risk-reward mechanic. The yellow aliens will also sometimes swoop down with red escorts, and depending on which order you kill them in, they'll be worth different amounts of points. The biggest difference between this and Galaxian is the addition of power-ups. If you shoot a yellow enemy while it's swooping, a power-up will plop into your inventory down the bottom of the screen. All the power-ups basically boil down to two different types, either some form of shield, or a weapon that's more powerful, but also less accurate, making you lose a few points at the end of level screen. Up to 4 power-ups can be stored at a time, and they can be used at your own convenience, something I appreciate. It adds a little bit of player choice and strategy to the chaos. All the power-ups only last for a very limited amount of time, but are also all very useful. Additionally, occasionally a floating caged ball will appear on the screen, and if you manage to break it open, which is not easy, it will drop out an extra life. Swoop also adds a little bit of enemy variety. Standard enemies get a more deadly attack later on, for example, and there are a handful of new enemies altogether. There are bomb-tossing shadow sweepers, drones that carpet bomb the bottom of the screen, and worst of all, a spider that will spawn and then move towards the bottom of the screen. If it reaches the bottom of the screen, it will slowly move towards you, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you're holding a power-up that can destroy it. Although Swoop is mostly a clone of Galaxian, the bonus levels are taken from the sequel, Galaga. Enemies fly down in pre-programmed formations, and the more you kill, the higher your bonus. Personally, I never liked these levels, even in Galaga. They are very heavy on memorization, and I would have preferred some kind of indication of where they're going to be flying from next. Although I do understand why Galaga did this, since it rewards players who play a lot and gives them a reason to keep coming back. Swoop messes it up a little bit though. In Galaga, it was impossible to die on the challenge levels, but it's very possible in Swoop. Although you don't actually lose a life, it still feels very unfair. All these additions make Swoop much more varied than the original Galaxian. Unfortunately, it gets the core game design quite a bit wrong. In Galaxian, enemies always dive bomb at the player, with different enemy types having different velocities, so you could anticipate their path and even try to manipulate it. This made the game feel very dynamic, and allowed the player to get a little bit strategic with their movement. In Swoop, however, enemies select from a small pool of pre-programmed attack patterns. This makes the game feel very unfair at first, because enemies will feel like they're faking you out and then suddenly crash into you at an angle and speed that make it very difficult to avoid. It's possible to learn to recognize the patterns as the enemies start moving towards you, but I found this very unrewarding. It also becomes much more difficult to do as the game becomes more chaotic. In the end, it makes the game feel much more static and less rewarding than the original Galaxian. There is also an enemy which will sometimes loop back from the bottom of the screen and suddenly kill you. They also had an enemy like this in Galaga, but you could actually see it spin back, whereas in Swoop, the experience is much more like this.
Surprise,
Swoop is definitely still a solid little space shooter, but the static design makes it lose that just one more game feeling that many other arcade games have, making it one of Ambrosia's less memorable titles. And that, my friends, is Swoop.